Our opening words today are by Sarah York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the entire congregation, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Shenandoah Valley. I am Alice Lees, your worship associate for today's service. We wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Shawnee and Manahoac tribes who lived in this area prior to the arrival of European settlers, who then took the land their own. We gather with our doubts, as well as our convictions, with our fears and our hopes, with our failures and our aspirations, with our sorrows and our joys. Whether you are joining us today for the first time, or you've been a member or a friend for many years, we are glad you are here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, whatever your background, whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived here, you are welcome. Our speaker for today is Reverend J Onnie. Reverend Onnie is a retired UU minister now living in Stanton, Virginia. He is the Minister Emerita of the Tri-County Unitarian Universalists. He has supplied pulpits, trained congregations in lay pastoral care, and facilitated workshops on organizational development, conflict management. He has also served as an outspoken supporter of professional clergy. He's a founder of and contributor to interfaith organizations and is a passionate advocate for social justice issues. He is a frequent contributor to newspapers and public forums. He's been a sabbatical minister in Canada and California. She is also a professional musician. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Janet to UCSV. And now, as Liz England comes forward to light the chalice, let's all say together, here and from our homes, words for lighting our chalice. Light of truth from forms of love, rather to seek, to sustain, to share. And I invite you to join with us as we say our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church. Quest for truth is its sacrament. Dwell together in peace. Seek the truth and freedom. And help our neighbor. These ends we covenant one with another. So please stand and body your spirit as we sing our opening song, which is hymn 347 in the Gray Hymnal.
As we enter into the silence, hear the words of Anne Frank. I can feel the suffering of millions, yet if I look up into the heavens, I think it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. In the meantime, I must uphold my ideals, for perhaps the time will come when I shall be able to carry them out. As we meditate on these words, let us come together, one breath, one beating heart. have a wonderful reading, Time for All Ages.
How many of you have read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Raise your hand. A lot, almost all. It must be a Unitarian story. We all know that Lucy discovers Narnia by walking through a wardrobe or a door. She went through a door. So this is about beyond every door. Lucy looks for the perfect place to hide and opens up the door to a big wardrobe. I'm echoing, I'll back up a bit. She goes through the door and into the back of the wardrobe, and suddenly she's in a whole other, a magical world with witches and fauns and talking beavers. Wouldn't it be cool then if there was a magical world beyond every door? When Lucy opened the door to Narnia, it didn't look like anything special. It was just a boring door to a wardrobe full of clothes and coats. But across its threshold was magic. Lucy already had a foot in Narnia before she quite realized what was happening. Many of the thresholds in our lives are like this. We don't know what we're crossing into another world until we're already halfway there. The door of a church takes us down a pathway of growth we might never have expected, right down our center aisle. The door to a doctor's office suddenly opens out into life with health or maybe a hard diagnosis. A restaurant door opens onto friends, good smells, good food, maybe even a first date. A beloved person's door might close behind you and send you out into a world heartbroken. The door to a library or a gym or a dance studio introduces you to a life's passion you might not have otherwise discovered. We cross these thresholds every day of our lives, for good and for ill, in joy and sorrow and bittersweet truth. Truly, even our own front door is a great threshold. No matter how familiar the worlds are within or without, given our lives' reality of constant change, every day we open the same old door again, only to step out into a world that is new since the day before. In this way, there is a new world behind every door, awaiting our discovery. We will only encounter it, if we could only encounter it as such. I wish you many doors of magic and pleasure.
We are in an exciting moment, possibility, when we have been forced to leave behind old truths and comfortable patterns. Individually, our habits upended. We have lived lives unimaginable just a few years ago. Collectively, systems and institutions are under pressure and bending to a new reality. Nobel Prize recipient Wisława Szymborska, in her poem Utopia, asks us to turn our back on unshakable confidence and a cave of meaning, to cease clinging to our tree of understanding and swimming in our lake of deep conviction. Yet, we don't grow and change unless we let go and take the plunge to embrace unfathomable life. Here is the poem, Utopia. Island, where all becomes clear, solid ground beneath your feet. The only roads are those that offer access. Bushes bend beneath the weight of proof. The tree of valid supposition grows here with branches disentangled since time immemorial. The tree of understanding, dazzling straight and simple, sprouts by the spring called Now I Get It. The thicker the woods, the vaster the vista, the valley of obviously. If any doubts arise, the wind dispels them instantly. Echoes stir unsummoned and eagerly explain all the secrets of the world. On the right, cave, where meaning lies. On the left, the lake of deep conviction. Truth breaks from the bottom and bobs to the surface. Unshakable confidence towers over the valley. Its peaks offer an excellent view of the essence of things. For all its charms, the island is uninhabited, and the faint footprints scattered on its beaches turn, without exception, as if all you can do here is leave and plunge, never to return, into the depths, into unfathomable life. Wasn't that a wonderful prelude? I know of no less than 3 people who have Imagine as their phone ring. I too am a big fan of the Beatles, but I have a bit of trouble with John Lennon's lyrics. He starts off with pure universalism. Imagine there is no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Next comes Buddhism. Imagine all the people living for today. Lennon's daydream continues. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Wait, what? No religion? I can't imagine a world with no religion. Without religious institutions, yes. But the questions of meaning and purpose, consideration of that which is of worthship, those questions will always have a place in the human psyche. Although I like the music, the world that Lennon asks me to imagine seems devoid of any edge, any mystery. I like a sense of adventure that will call for risk and courage and unknown outcomes. The world of Star Trek. John Lennon's world seems static. Lucky for me, that's not the world of the foreseeable future. And the future is what I want to talk about today. I've been interested in the future since Future Shock came out in the 1970s. The author, Alvin Toffler, who died in 2016, defined future shock as a personal perception of too much change in too short a period of time. The value of this book, he says, was to teach people that the best defense against the future is to think about it, to imagine different scenarios, and to try to avoid being taken by surprise. A lot of people took this advice to heart. The book sold over 6 million copies and was widely translated. The central theme of Toffler's work has proven absolutely true, that a knowledge-based new economy would replace the industrial age. Specifically, he saw the rise of internet and cable television. He said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is why the decline of a liberal arts education, teaching people how to think, how to learn, why this is such a tragedy. Toffler went on, genetic engineering and cloning. Toffler foresaw a future where a woman would be able to buy a tiny embryo, take it to her doctor, have it implanted in her uterus, and then give birth as though it had been conceived in her own body. My grandnephew, Gabe, proof of that prediction. He predicted the demise of the nuclear family. We shall also see many more family units consisting of a single unmarried adult and one or more children. Nor will all of these adults be women. As homosexuality becomes more socially acceptable, we may even begin to find families based on homosexual marriage in the 1970s. So today, consider the example of U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg and his husband Chasten and their 2 children. Toffler also acknowledged the societal shift in delaying the decision to have children. My daughter is an example. Maybe your children are too. Consumerism. In the age of Amazon and the proliferation of online marketplaces and share economies, Toffler thoughts on consumerism as a global trend reads true. That people of the future may suffer not from an absence of choice, but from a paralyzing surfeit of it. They may turn out to be victims of that peculiarly super-industrial dilemma, overchoice. In coining the term prosumer, Toffler predicted the emergence of the combined role of a producer and consumer, or the trend of DIY, yourself in every aspect of life. You who have downsized from one home to another, and certainly attest to the truth of overchoice. You who have put together an IKEA bookcase understand prosumer. Now, each of these examples is worthy of a sermon in and of itself. And the emergence of artificial intelligence is worthy of a whole series of sermons and discussion groups. Toffler was right. I think the best defense against the future is to think about it, to try to avoid being surprised. We Homo sapiens are great planners, a quality that has given us enormous survival skills. Consider, there's little need to run down your prey if you can accurately anticipate where it will be and then ambush it. We become anxious when we are the ambushees. 2016 presidential election ambushed everyone, even those who supported the former president, despite all those predictive analytics, which just goes to prove data isn't everything. You may have heard talk about hinge times. Hinges are artifacts that allow objects to move in and out, up and down, like the cupboard we heard about this morning. Go through the door and everything changes. Hinge times are periods in history, in human history, that happen every 500 years or so, where everything, social, political, economic, cultural, religious, you name it, all the institutions are shaken to their foundations, and then they come out reconfigured. You've probably also heard the term axial age, referring specifically to religion. This morning, I'm going to try to weave these two into a framework that might help us make sense of the times in which we find ourselves. Nowadays, we could all benefit from a wider view of the world than the damage report we're subjected to day after day after day. We have to work hard to find something that isn't seen through the lens of our fragile and dysfunctional system of governance. For instance, a second malaria vaccine has been developed and has already been deployed to over 2 million children in Africa. The rise in renewable energy resources leads to a climate analytics report that predicts a 70% chance that greenhouse gases will fall in 2024 and beyond. Meat grown in the lab is gaining wider acceptance. Japan and India have put landers on the moon. We found the Mars helicopter. Images from the deep space telescopes have put our individual lives on this fragile planet into a bit of perspective. Obesity has been recognized as a disease. And researchers have found that cats have as many expressive and communicative strategies as do the dogs. They just decline to participate in the studies. These wondrous things that are reported in the newspapers and the other media, they're, not given much play, if any. I'm lucky to be in a profession that practically requires me to read newspapers and anything else I can get my hands on. Absolutely everything is sermon fodder, and some of it actually makes its way into Sunday morning. Lately, I have been reading about the future of religion, and some developments may be a cause for optimism. People who study the global religious landscape are characterizing this time in history as the second axial age, a window of time that fell roughly between 800 and 200 BCE. It's the period of human history, the first axial age, during which the headwaters of our great religious traditions began to form. They began to form seemingly independently around the globe. Lao Tse taught the way of the Tao in China. The seers of the Upanishads were busy realizing the self in India. The Hebrew prophets preached social justice and monotheism in Israel. Early Greek philosophies emerged. Buddha had his great awakening. A planetary shift in spiritual understanding was underway. Until this shift, human spirituality had been largely earth-based, and the original gods and goddesses were found in the cycles and the seasons and forces of nature. Axial spirituality began breaking ties with both collective identity and with the earth. At the same time, with a new emphasis on the individual and the transcendent, the models of salvation or enlightenment that emerged began to look a lot like escape. There was a profound sense that something was wrong with this world, and that began to dominate the spiritual landscape, whether it was understood as fallenness or sin in the West, or suffering and samsara in the East. Something was wrong, and the ultimate goal was to get out of here, to attain the heavenly prize, or to escape the cycle of death and rebirth. This sense of exile has been a deep undercurrent in human spirituality ever since. Now, let me say that again, because I think this is the reason that many of you are here today. Religion up to this point was focused on the notion that something was wrong, had gone awry, and the ultimate goal of life was to get out of here, to attain a heavenly prize, or escape the cycle of death and rebirth. This sense of exile has been a deep, deep undercurrent in human spirituality ever since. Humanism's great gift is to call us out of exile, to articulate the sense that we belong deeply to this world and to each other. The truth of interconnection is pouring in from every field of knowledge, from environmentalists recognizing that we are part of a global ecosystem, to quantum physicists uncovering deep interconnected life at the most subtle levels of matter. To evolutionary biologists revealing life's unfolding as a single vast process. Not to mention the internet and smartphones, which are interweaving the world at a level of communication never seen before. Slowly, we are beginning to discover that there is ultimately no separation within the field of existence. No separation within the field of existence. With the emergence of this new global interconnected awareness, many thinkers are now telling us that we are entering a second axial age, another great global shift in consciousness, equal in weight and importance to that first great shift produced our existing religious traditions. And religion and spirituality are being transformed all over again. With this second shift, we are picking up everything that we lost in that first great axial transformation. The profound earthiness, the connection to our bodies, and a deep sense of collective identity. But we're not picking them back up at a tribal level. We're picking them up at a global level. We are one tribe, one human family, one planet Earth. At the same time, we're not losing our appreciation of the individual, transcendent, the rational that we have cultivated over the past 2,000 years. Rather, we're integrating it with an appreciation of the collective, eminent, intuitive, now bound together in a vision big enough for the entire human family. This second axial age is about the marriage of heaven and earth, the eminent and the transcendent, spirit and body, time and eternity. 500 years ago, in 1517, Martin Luther articulated an idea that would serve as a hinge to propel religious thought forward through the next 500 years. The idea that the divine was accessible to everyone without institutional intervention laid the groundwork for Unitarian Universalism. Now, 2024, individuals are leaving behind divisive forms of religion as they awaken to a sense of global humanity and interconnection. Spiritually hungry nuns and spiritual not religious are in the forefront of awakening. So are we, Unitarian Universalists. You who are here today are the hinge swinging into the future. People all over the planet are struggling with the images of a cruel world full of fear, violence, and injustice that they are powerless to influence. Unitarian Universalists paint a different picture. While acknowledging that we are in a tsunami of cultural change where it is all too easy to fall into despair, we have a more optimistic vision. This vision is articulated by our Reverend Frederick Muir. He said, living a life grounded in a posture of generosity in a diverse community where people don't just tolerate, but engage each other. Living with an imagination that pushes us outside the orthodox, constrained ways of a reluctant, if not fear-driven, secular culture. This is the Trinity of promises. This is Unitarian Universalism. It is a spiritual and spirited way of faith. I can't imagine a world with no religion. What I can imagine is a world filled with generosity, pluralism, and imagination. A microcosm of that world right in front of me, around you, around you. We are the future. We only need to act like we believe it. May it be so. Amen.
The purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather to grow more generous in spirit and in action. We will now gratefully receive an offering to sustain this self-supporting church and its ministries within and beyond our walls. If you happen to be watching online, we hope you will consider making an offering through our webpage, uushenandoah.org. If you are visiting with us today, you are our welcome guest. Please feel free to let the basket pass you by. Now, Liz comes forward. Let us all say together, here and from our homes, the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of our community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until